Okay. All right, we're going to continue. Maybe this is the finale of the names topic. Maybe it's not. We'll see. I want to talk about the idea of changing a name. Now, I think Rav Chaim Kanievsky had particular shittas about certain names, and he would make people change them. But that's like the more exceptional and let's call it unusual type of name changes. That's uncommon. You don't find a lot of Rabbanim and Poskim advising people to change their names. You do find like Mekubalim and stuff like that who, based on like name readings or whatever, will tell people to change their names. But again, that's like the less popular type of name changing that's available. The most common type of name change that's available really comes from a Gemara. Now, before I start the Gemara, I just want to say a few little interesting tidbits over here. The Chazon Ish, someone once came to him and said, my I think it was a daughter or a wife. My wife is very sick. She really needs Yeshua, and I want to change her name. What name should I change it to? So the Chazon Ish told her. He thought for a second. Chazon Ish says you should change it to Miriam. She says, no, Miriam. My daughter's name is Miriam. I can't change it to Miriam. So he says, change it to Devorah. Change the name to Devorah. Okay, Devorah I could do it. And the guy leaves. He goes to change the name to Devorah. So when the guy left, the Talmidim around asked the Chazon Ish, what's his name? Is Miriam Devorah? I said, no, that's about Chesed. If I would just tell the guy, Zelo Mishaneh, do whatever name you want, that doesn't give a guy any confidence. If I tell him this particular name, this is what Chazon Ish said. So meaning, what that says is that even though there's a Messiah to change names, like when someone's in a dangerous spot, there's not such a clear Messiah as to what name to change to and what the name change actually accomplishes, like which name. Now for men, that isn't so. For men, there's like Chizkiyo and Chaim and Raphael, right? These different names that are the name really says what it is, right? Like to help a person, it's like a school for Erich Yavim, etc. But for women, the Chazon Ish obviously felt that there was. Now, Stam, another cautionary note is the Steipler used to say, and we'll see the Lashon HaGemara soon, the Steipler used to say that Chazal say that if a person needs a Yeshua, he should change his name. Shinei Hashem is one of the things that are helpful. He says, but Chazal don't say that it works. They just say to do it. That's what the Steipler says. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. That's what the Steipler said. Chazal don't say it works, they say to do it. And Ad Kedei Kach, the Steipler said, and this is a wild thing, he said, sometimes a person is alive and in terrible Yisurim, and really is ready to die, and he needs a schus to die. And when you change the name and give him a new name, that's the schus he was waiting for, and now he could die in peace. This is what the Steipler said. So again, like dumping like a whole pail of cold water on the, changing the names and not changing the names. Now, additionally, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, what do you say? Yeah, but not the schus you think, Dafka, right? Not the schus you mean it. Now, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who incidentally had an extra name, his name was Chaim Sonnenfeld. Yosef was an addition. The additional name goes first, like we'll see, and he was always referred to as Yosef Chaim after that. He lived a long time after he got the name. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld said that, oh, you didn't know this? Oh, okay. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld said that Bizmanenu, nobody really knows enough to change a name, and we should avoid changing names, even if someone's very sick. He did not like the whole thing. He said not to do it. Now, it's interesting that he himself had a name change that stuck, and it was called, and on his matzeva, if you've been, it says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, it's the name's on there, it's fully on there. Now, sometimes if a name is added late in life, and you're not sure to put it on or not, like, let's say someone added a name, and then the guy dies anyhow, shortly. Like, you put the name in the Matzeva, not put the name in the Matzeva. So I actually saw, I'm like, this is, maybe, yeah. This is very anachronistic. I'm just like throwing different things at the wall here. We'll try to organize this soon. But there was someone who got a name that he didn't heal him, and they asked the Steipler if they should put the name on the Matzeva, and the Steipler said, put the name in parentheses on the Matzeva, which is the way they went to the Chaver Kadisha. The Chaver Kadisha said, no, we don't do parentheses on Matzevis. This is the Chaver Kadisha said, so they went back to the Steipler, and the Steipler suggested to write it in Kleina Oisius. Like meaning write the full name in large block letters, and then the additional name in small letters in front of it. Like, so different eitzes things, so whatever, meaning all I'm just saying is that this is not a perfect science. The adding names, what they do, and does it really work, or does it always work, does it never work, do you keep the name, do you not keep the name, it's not a perfect science. It's kind of vague, and even amongst the various Gedalim who spoke on it, there's different angles. Now, what's interesting is the whole idea of changing a name l'chayra is because the name carries in it some sort of mazel, right? Like we said, a name has a certain power and potency, and if the name has some sort of bad mazel, so when you change it, you could change that mazel. Now, sometimes the guy had a very good life. He had pretty solid mazel, right? He did well, he made a parnasa, he had children, he married off children, married off Einiklach. Now, granted, he is very sick now, but who's to say that the name you're changing to is a better mazel name than the name that he had. Meaning sometimes the guy had very good mazel, like it's not the thing. And there's actually some different stories of Gedolim like waving off the changes. Like supposedly when Rabbi Yashiv was sick, they asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky if they should change the name. And Rabbi Yashiv said, Reb Chaim said, I think that name, Rabbi Yosef Shalom, it's a pretty good one. Like it's working. It's not a bad name. It's a working name. I wouldn't mess with that. So there's different. My point is just it's not so cut and dry. It's not like it's so cut and dry. Now let's go through the Inyan a little bit from the sources, and then we'll try to organize this all. So the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Zayin and Beis says as follows. It says as follows. V'amar of Yitzchak, Daled Dvarim, Mekarin, Dinoi Shalad, Gzar Dinoi Shaladam. 4 things tear up a Gzar Din that's on a person. Ve'eluheim, these are them. Tzedakah, Tzedakah, and Shinei Hashem. And maybe Shinei Maisa. Tzedakah d'chsev, v'tzedakah tatzam imaves. Tzedakah d'chsev, v'yitzaku al Hashem b'tzar lehem imitzukaseyim yitziyim. Shinei Hashem d'chsev, Sarah yishtecha lesikra shma Sarah kim Sarah shma. V'ksiv v'berach l'yosef v'gam matzati mimena l'chaben Shinei Maisa. This is the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, it's pretty unfortunate Gemara. The Gemara says there are 4 things that if you change them, it helps a person. And one of them clearly is changing it to shame, changing a name. And the Gemara's Makaris from Sarah, who changed her name and then was Zeichet to children. Until then, Sarai was not Zeichet to children. When her name became Sarah, she was Zeichet to children. This is what the Gemara says. Now, there's a big nidin in the Rishonim how to understand what's going on in this Gemara. Is the Gemara saying it's like a ba'ifin skuli? It's a skula de gezach that when you change the name, like the person changes, like something like gives them a new kaiches, a new burst of energy, a new sherish and hashama, like something kabbalistic like that, or is the Gemara just saying kipshutai that this is in the list of tshuva things, like tshuva, tza'aka, tefillah, shinei Hashem, it's another form of tshuva. Now, so it's a big machlekes Rishonim actually, how to learn this Gemara, and I want to just show you a few of the different nuschayos in the Rishonim, without getting too nitty gritty over here. In the Sefer HaChinuch, in Mitzvah Shin Yud Aleph, he says as follows: Inyan shinei Hashem hu lefi adaymeh, kivi sheyachshav ha'adam ki'ilu hu adam acher, v'yachshir kol drachav. It's a person should consider himself like he's a new person, and fix all his ways, repair all his ways. And every time he gets called by the new name, Yizkar Zev Yitin Liba Ela Inyan. And pay attention. So the chinuch sounds like it's like a tshuva related sort of thing. The Ran in Rosh Hashanah Afanar says also Shinei Hashem Garim Leilasis Tshuva. Changing a name causes a person to do tshuva. It's a tshuva thing. It's to spur a guy to do tshuva. The Rambam is very interesting. The Rambam in Parak Beis of Hilchos Tshuva and Halacha Daled, the Rambam has a very interesting sprach. The Rambam says like this. The Rambam says, Midarke hatshuva, liyas hashav tzayek tamid lefnei Hashem. The normal derech of tshuva is that the shav, the person who's doing tshuva, should be tamid tzayek lefnei Hashem. Bebechi ubesachnunim va'oiset tzedakah k'fi he does as much tzedakah as he can. Umisrachek harbim min hadavar shechata b'ay, and he tries to keep his distance from the thing that he did the avera. Umeshana shmai, and he changes his name. Kalemer ani acher, as if to say, I'm another person. Ve'eni oisei haish oisei asan hamaisim. I'm not that man that did those averas. Umeshana hamaisav kulam l'tayva l'derech yishar v'goylim m'kaymei shagalus mechaveres. So the Rambam has this like funny sprach. The Rambam says it's as if he's saying it's like some sort of ultimate tshuva where a guy says, I'm not that person who did those averas. Meaning someone when he changes his name, it's like he dispossesses his identity, his old identity of the Baal Avera, the person that he was, he dispossesses that identity. Now the Lach Mishnah over here on the Rambam brings down the Makar is the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, and the Lach Mishnah makes an interesting observation. He says if you look at the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah sounds like maybe you need to do all 4. Like the tshuva process is, and the way the Rambam brings it, the Rambam also sounds like you need to do all 4. It's like from Hilchas Tshuva. It's not a refuah, a mazel thing. It's Hilchas Tshuva. Just like the Rambam has steps for Tshuva, the Rambam says Miderech of Baal Tshuva is to do these things. To do tzedakah, to mishana his shame, to try to disassociate himself from the identity of being an Avarian. This is how and the Lach Mishnah points at the Makar from the Gemara, although the Lach Mishnah says that ultimately the Rambam Shita is that any one of them alone is enough, but that's what it sounds like in the Rambam. So these are all various Rishonim that sound like they're learning Shinei Hashem in a little bit of a different way than maybe what we would think. Meaning it's a tshuva dikadin. The Aruch LaNer also learns like this. Now mitzad sheni, you have others like the Ritva and the Rajba and others. The Ritva Lamashal says Afanar and Rosh Hashanah. He says Pirush Shinei Hashem shemeshana eshma, you change your name she'enei ha'ish bal averis kadesh she'eskiru l'ra ubar mehachi the batel v'nafik mitztagnunis delay. You left your celestial, your mazel. You left what you were born under. The Ritva is saying it's some sort of like real, call it Kabbalistic, call it whatever you want, like something really changes in the person. It's not just tshuva. And he brings a raya from, he's like Kederach Sh'amru B'Avram, and he's referencing a Gemara in Shabbos, Taf Kuf Nun Vav, that says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu that say me it's Tagnina Shulcha, right? When Hashem was ready to help Avram Avinu to have children, he said, go out of your Tzagninus, enter a new one. Hashem changed his name. So you see Avram to Avraham, and he left the Tzagninus. Similarly, the Rashba in the Tshuva, the Rashba says, Be'ishtanas Hashem Yishtana HaMazel. Very clearly. When a person's name changes, his mazel changes. So some Rishonim are learning it like Medina Hilchas Tshuva, and some Rishonim are learning it Medina Mazel. But the Gemara seems to say there's a concept of changing a name to somehow get out of a tight spot, a bad predicament. Now, I mentioned to you before that back in the day, people would use this for all different things. Meaning, if a person wasn't making parnassa, or he needed a shidduch, or he needed to have children, right? Meaning, Shinui Hashem was not specifically to a chayla. It was something that could be done for many, many different, predicaments that a person could find himself in. Lamaise, how did it come to be associated with a chayla dafka? So the Ramah in Yeridea, in Hilchas Bikur Chaylim, at the end of Hilchas Bikur Chaylim, the Ramah says like this, in Siman Shin Lamed Hey, in Yeridea and Sif Yod, the Ramah says as follows, Haga, it's a packed full of things, this Ramah. He says, Haga, Yesh Yomim Shemishi Yesh Lechayla Bebeisai. There are those that say that someone who has an ill person in his house, Yelech Etz Chacham Shebeir Sheyivakish Levrachmim. Go to the Chacham in the city that he should be Vakish Rachmim. He's referencing in Gemara Basra that says Yelech Etz Chacham Shebeir, to the Chacham Shebeir. Now interestingly, the Muki Yosef, half an art in Basra, says Chacham Shebeir means there's Shiva. So it doesn't mean a Rebbe, it means it's a stam, common mistake. Common mistake. But that's the Ramah brings this minig, the Yelech Etz Chacham Shebeir Sheyivakish Levrachmim, V'chein Nag U'levarach HaChayil Beis HaKnesses, and the second thing is, the minig is to bench the Chayil Beis HaKnesses, which we still do, right? Mish Berach L'Chayil, that's what the Ramah is referring to. And V'chein Nag U'levarach HaChayil Beis HaKnesses, L'Kroya Lahem Shem Chadash, to give them a new name. Kishina Hashem Kaireg Zardina. I'm sorry, this is not the Mishaberach L'Chayil. This is the Ramah saying, we make a Mishaberach and Shul to give them a new name. Kishina Hashem Kaireg Zardina. Shina Hashem is rips up Exardins. The Ramah paskins, like this Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, meaning putting aside the whole debate in the Rishonim, if it works because of tshuva or works because of Shina Mazel, whatever it is, the Ramah paskins that this is an appropriate thing to do for someone who's very ill. We mishana his name and we hope that will help him. Now the Aruch HaShulchan in Yeridei Af and Art adds a little bit more, and I'll read you Hishbrach because he has a few more details. He says as follows. If the disease, the illness is very strong, Meshanin Hashem, we change the name. We add on another name to his name. So over here the Aruch HaShulchan adds in a few familiar concepts to us. First of all, he says it's only when something's very severely ill. We don't stop a guy has a flu, you change his name. You can't change your name every Rosh Chodesh. There are people who would like to do that. New LLC, right? Every month, but he's not. He says you don't change your name every Rosh Chodesh. It has to be when the illness is very severe. Then you could change your name. And then he says the second thing is Moisifin Leishem. We add on a name. You don't actually stop using the first name. You add on a name instead, and that's what Aruch HaShulchan says. Now there's a whole in the back of a lot of Tehillims. You can see this. There's a whole Seder Dvarim, what the Shina Hashem is, like the Gesher Chaim brings down that we say. I forgot exactly his instructions, but the Gesher Chaim says, I think you say Hashem Hashem, you say if there's a Hiratzin for it, there's some Tehillim for it. I mean, there's a whole Seder. You can look in the back of something, the back of a lot, any good Tehillim in the back has the Seder Adorim for Shina Hashem, and it's a relatively simple procedure to change the name from most of a name. Now, what's interesting is, and we really opened with this, is that it's very hard to know what an appropriate change is. Meaning, we're seeing from all the various different Gedalim stories of Gedalim that we said over, it's very hard to know what the right thing is. Like, what name are you going for? What's the name that's going to fix this? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? So there's a Messiah, it's a Chassidish Messiah, but I think today everyone agrees with this. The Ber Mayim Chaim brings down from Reb Michal Zlotchever, who was his Rebbe, that you're not allowed to change your name unless you consult with someone who's Kemat B'Madreges Ruach HaKodesh. Now, we spoke weeks ago about that result that says that when a person gets a name, it's like a Ruach HaKodesh his parents have. So it makes sense that in order to change that name, you would need to consult with someone that's on a similar, level of Gila in order to make the change. And this became something that I think, I saw Ramat Chagros in his Sefer Shma Garim has a whole arichas about this. And I think this is true. Almost nobody just changes the name without consulting. It's like something you go to, what? That's why they go to the Rebbe. Yeah, you go to Rebbe, you go to Chaim Kanievsky, it's something people go to, go to Makubal, it's something people go to, the highest tier, Rabbanim to get approval. And it seems it's an Al Tachsidish Messiah, but it's a very sensible Messiah. It makes sense. We're dealing with something that's like, far from a certain science, and you're being oiker a name that a person's mazel that he got Baruch HaKodesh. You want to change it to something else. It makes sense that you need like.
That's why they came thing to add on.
To add on instead of changing. Yeah, I believe that. I think the original back in the day was to change it. The Pashas Mashrois of the Gemara is that you change the name, right? Just like Shina Makam, for example, you can't live in two places at one time, right? If you're moving to a new town, right? It's right. If we're comparing Shina Shem Shina Makam, I think that's the Pashas. But I think because of what you're saying, because it's somewhat imperfect or unknown exactly what the pratim are and what you're supposed to do, the minute we came to just add on, not to change. Now, what's interesting is there's a whole need in the Paiskim what to do with the name when the person gets better. Now, first of all, what does it mean the guy got better? If you meet people, whatever, I don't want to be too cynical, but you meet people, they could tell you, at the end of life, and I was there, and I mentioned X, Y, and Z, and the numbers shot up, and then Lamaisa, the guy died 2 days later anyhow, right? So like, these type of fake, so what does it mean to get better? What does it mean that you gave a name and the guy got better? So again, it doesn't say this anywhere clearly in halacha, what better means. Some say better would mean l'chayra, the guy got out of bed, he's walking like a regular person, right? L'chayra, he's living, he's thriving. Some say better means a month. Some people say he came out of that dip, even if, so the Paiskim are a little bit vague as to like what it means. Now, what's interesting is that it's actually very early Paiskim that handle this. The Mabit has a tshuva about it, the Re'im has a tshuva about it. These are 400 or 500-year-old Paiskim that are handling it because the nafkamina is, do you have to write it in a get or a ksuba or etc., like I think you mentioned. So, meaning, and at what point does it stick? At what point is this a name that like has to stick or not? And it's very hard to get a super clear answer to that. I think maybe, I don't know. Maybe a month, maybe it's hard to know. What's interesting is that Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who got his extra name earlier on and lived, he got out of bed and lived. He kept the name, and it became, today he's like known as Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, right? I don't think he's called Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld anymore. It's Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, that's his name. You probably named Yosef Chaim already, right? Like that's the name. So that name really stuck in its honor Batseva. But Rev Kook, actually, when he was sick, I saw this brought down. I never knew this till I was looking into this Indian. Rev Kook, on his deathbed, or when I was close to his deathbed, they added the name Chizkiyahu to him. Chizkiyahu Avram Yitzchak Kook. I don't know if you've been to his if anyone's been to his kever, but it doesn't say Chizkiyahu. The name didn't stick with him. Now I don't know exactly how long from when they gave the name to when he died it was. But the point is, these names sometimes they come and go, sometimes they stay. It's an imperfect science. Now,
why would we want to revert to the old mazel?
So this is, what do you mean revert to the old mazel? By keeping the old name? Well, you didn't get rid of the old name. Nowadays we keep both names.
For whatever reason you changed it. Now this is.
You should be referred to him.
Almost.
So that's why we put it first. Meaning the reason why when you give two names you put that name first is because that's the name that's keeping. We look at it like that's the name that's keeping him alive.
So then why would it's almost like pulling the plug on him
To keep the other name.
Taking away the name.
To take away which name? The first name? Take away the first name. I mean, if you don't include it on his documents and whatever.
Yeah,
hey, but if we're talking about a matzeva, so then I think that ship has sailed, right? But if we're talking about, I don't know. I looked around. Everyone says something different. It's very hard to get a clear read on this, on what to do. In any case, just to summarize, it really comes from a Gemara. It's a Mefurish Gemara, which is rare in the name sugya, meaning like a real Klar Azach that Shina Hashem works. It's Kepaskin in the Shulchan Aruch, so it has like all the very. It's a Gemara that's Kepaskin in the Shulchan Aruch, so it's really a very, very, call it mainstream. It's a halacha that you could change the name. Now after that is where everything goes gray, meaning how much time, how little, what the names for men, for women, etc. So we'll leave this. It's a little vague. It's a vague question, which is why I guess you have to consult with top tier Rabbanim for changing the name, which is maybe that's Taka the Messiah. Now I think we understand why. In any case, I think we're done the name topic. I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, to be continued. Maybe a different topic, but to be continued.
Checking Smart Ocean.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.